People have been asking me to cover the Basic in Behavior Green, or aka the Science Alternate Universe, created by a YouTuber named Molly. So in this video, I'm going to do a quick recap of the animation and also kind of break down what's happening in this alternate universe and why. Now the animation starts out with Miss Sasha walking down the hallway, and in this universe, she seems to act as a nurse or like a physician. And we also see 3 students right off the back that are locked away, those kids being Claire, Bubbles, and Ingle, which kind of makes sense because in the original animation, these 3 were like best friends. In the next scene, we see Miss Thavel, who is a scientist in this universe, and then we see Miss Grace, who is the lab manager, and they seem to be placing up signs to help keep the other employees safe. Because while at this point we don't know what happened to the children, we can confirm that they are in some type of hospital or science lab and have to be locked away for either their own good or for the safeties of others, or both. Which is why we see this sign here that says do not go near the students, and also don't look into Bubbles' eyes or Robbie's eyes. And the reason for this becomes clear very quickly. It seems that Bubbles' eyes have the ability to put people in like a trance or to hypnotize them and basically force them to do her bidding. And this is why we actually see Miss Sasha walking around with her eyes looking like Bubbles. And even though Miss Circle catches on to what's happening, she's not fast enough to actually stop Sasha from opening the door to Abby's room, allowing him to escape. And I know that it's hard to recognize Abby because he looks so different, but I'll explain why in a bit. The next part of this animation is very reminiscent of the original Basics in Behavior episode by Katie, with Abby running down the hallway, being chased by Miss Circle at first, and then eventually we see the other teacher named Mr. Demi actually hop in to chase him as well. But it seems that Abby is no longer just a defenseless little boy, as we see him sprout tendrils from his back that look very similar to Alice's tendrils. And we know that he is at least somewhat strong because even Miss Circle tells Mr. Demi to run away, showing that she doesn't really want to smoke with this kid. Whereas if you remember in the original animation, she beat up Abby pretty bad. The next scene has 2 details that stood out for me. The first being the green sky outside, which may give us a hint as to why the children are all sick, and also the close sign on the hospital/lab building, showing that this place is no longer able to take on new patients. We also see Miss Emily, who is my favorite character, and she's a lab tech in this universe and seems to be observing the children. And right next to her is Miss Boomy, and she is the principal investigator for this lab. And I know that sounds kind of weird, almost more like a police title, but basically it just means that she is the person that is in charge of the research that has been conducted here. And that's one thing that I really want to point out here. It may look like the adults are doing like experiments on these kids, but they're really not. They're simply just trying to keep them contained and do research to help cure these children. Something else that I found interesting here is that Ruby, which is this little TV girl, who in my last video I said reminds me of Skibbity Toilet, and this character here, I believe his name is Scale, they are both in the same room, and it seems like Ruby's face has been broken. And it's hard to say if Scale actually did this or if this is just something that happened to her outside of this room. But I think it's fairly safe to like imply that these children are prone to violence, which may be why they have to be locked up in the first place. Now in the next scene, we see Mr. Demi again, and this time he's looking into the room that houses Robbie and Riley. And just a little fun fact here, it looks like Riley is writing something into the wall, and it may be I love Oliver, but I'm not sure. Now here's where we see Mr. Demi make a mistake by looking Robbie in his eyes and falling under his control, because as I said earlier, both Robbie and Bubble have the abilities to hypnotize people with their eyes. And this causes him to hit the button that says liberating experiments, which basically means to set the children free. And the place basically falls into chaos, with some of the children even attacking each other, like we see here with Ingle basically bullying Edward. And it may be hard to see in this image, but just a little fun fact here, or I should say a sad fact, Edward is actually blind, but before he lost his eyes, he also had the ability to hypnotize people. But I think his blindness is why maybe some of the other kids are bullying him a little bit, especially Ingle. Next, we see the adults doing their best to keep all the students in check, but once Miss Grace sees that it's a losing battle, even after knocking out a few kids, she puts a couple of bullets into Alice's lab door, and then we see Alice come out and basically put everything in check very quickly, basically picking up all the students with her tendrils and throwing them back into their cells. Well, throwing all of them into their cells except Oliver, who she gently places down, and then he walks into his cell. And we know that she does this because that's her boo, basically. And I'm not just making that up, by the way. The creator of this animation basically said on Twitter that Alex doesn't even care about these other kids. She's only helping so that she can find a way to cure Oliver, which makes sense when you really think about it. The animation ends with the teachers picking themselves up and trying to go back to business as usual because they still need to cure these children. And of course, we get the iconic line from the original animation where Miss Circle asks, what are you doing? But with that, now that we've actually covered what happened in the animation, let me explain why all this is happening in the first place. So from what I was able to actually gather, it seems like something happened that caused the students to be exposed to a large amount of radiation, which may be why the sky outside is green, while this lab is shut down, and also why these children are sealed away. The adults are trying to do research on these children to see if they can turn them back to normal. And the reason that Abby looks like Alice in her transformed state is because when Abby was exposed to the radiation, he tried to attack Oliver. So of course, Alice had to jump in and save her boyfriend. So in the animation, Abby is nowhere near as powerful as Alice, but he does have about 1/10 of her power, which is still a huge upgrade considering that he was pretty weak before. And we can assume that he's at least on par with Miss Circle, or maybe a little more powerful than she is, because she did not want to fight that kid. Something else that you may have noticed at the end of the animation is that when Miss Sasha takes off her face mask, she has severe damage around her mouth. This is because she was the teacher who actually took the most damage from the radiation and the students when she was trying to save them and get them to this lab. So basically, while some of the other teachers were trying to save themselves, Miss Sasha went out, took those students out of the radiation and got them into the lab, even though they were fighting her the whole time. So while in some of the other animations, Miss Sasha didn't have a huge role, in this one, she is definitely like the hero. And I like that on Twitter, Molly actually put up a picture that kind of shows the scars that she has all over her body. We can see here that she got pretty banged up, all just to save her students. So kudos to her. And next, I just want to go over the sprites for each of these characters because they are actually really well done. Like right here, we have Claire, Ingle, Bubbles, Lana, and then Abby. And I just want to point out that it seems like the radiation has changed these people like physically. So Ingle definitely looks more monstrous, but when you look at Claire, she almost looks like she has hooves now and her limbs are all elongated and she has like sharp teeth almost. And with Lana, her little sock puppet hands have turned into like real snakes or monsters of some sort. And this is kind of our first hint that the radiation didn't just like make these kids sick, but it changed their whole like body composition almost. In the second image, we see that Alice is just a regular scientist and she seems to be fine. She got away from the radiation, but Oliver, Zip, and Edward are all a bit messed up. I like that with Zip, you actually get to see her dragon wings here, which I think are pretty cool. But I know a lot of people are freaked out by like her black lips and the sharp teeth. But personally, I like her design. This right here is the older version of the Oliver design, but I think I have the new one here as well. I'll show in a minute. Right here, we have Petunia, Lizzie, Kevin, and then Cubby. And actually, I think Cubby, if that's how you say his name, is one of my favorite designs. I just like the way he looks. I think it's dope. And we see Kevin right here is another one of those characters that is blind, but I don't think that he had the same eyes as like Robbie and Bubbles, so I don't think he can hypnotize people. And right here we have Robbie, Riley, Ruby, and Skell. And then right here is the newer version of Oliver, and I think this is one that Molly actually wants people to know about, so I wanted to make sure to show this one. And personally, I do like this version of him a little bit more. He looks a bit more vicious here. And while this next part isn't super important, I do like that Molly also put up this little chart showing what some of the teachers and students actually like. So as we see up here, Miss Circle obviously loves her Oreos. We see that Mr. Demi is a fan of Coca-Cola. We see that Alice loves rabbits or bunnies, which surprised me because she comes off as such like a, mean person, but she likes little animals. Miss Sasha is a big fan of Pepsi, and so on and so forth. And like I said, I know it's not super important, but I did think it was just a little fun fact to throw in. And even though this animation was really short, I felt like it was really well done and it had an interesting backstory and character design. And if you want to support Molly, you can click on this video here, go to her channel, check out the video for yourself, like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow with another one. Peace, peace.